Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Backstory. Back when I was in college, my pathophysiology class had a final project worth 50% of the total grades we could earn, and groups were picked at the beginning of the semester. This was a massive project that you were expected to start working on at the beginning of the semester, and if you thought you could do it all last minute, you were probably in for a bad time. It was myself, two other girls who I knew worked hard, and then this one guy that the one girl was crushing on. She had to add him to our group because he was cute or something. I have no idea. I call him idiot every time I tell the story though, because he truly was an idiot. The girls were fantastic and everyone pulled their own weight during this project, with exception to the idiot. The idiot never once did any of the group project work. He ignored all the messages through texting/Facebook, but would answer the one girl if she was flirting with him. He would only show up to class maybe twice a month, if that. He would constantly post photos of himself on vacations in Mexico or the Bahamas. I'm pretty sure he spent more time out of the country than in it. 1 week before the project is due, he messages a group asking what pages in the textbook he needs to look through to do his part of the project. We tell him what he needs to do and where to find the information. We laid everything out for him, and if we did anything more, we would be better off doing his part of the project ourselves. The idiot thanked us and then disappeared. We all assumed he was doing the work he needed to do, and we were prepared to take a hit on our marks because he didn't have anything done up until now, so the quality of his work was probably terrible at best. Project due date rolls around and he's nowhere to be found, and he's ignoring all of our desperate messages. We, myself and the two girls, go to the professor and tell her everything that happened, along with screenshots of the literal months' worth of conversations where we constantly tried to get the idiot to come to labs with us, or the library where we offered to help him do his part. The professor, not amused, immediately fired off an email to the idiot and CC'd the head of the program as well, basically saying that the idiot needs to either do his part and show up to class the next week with it, or he will receive a 0, and the rest of us won't be affected. Can you guess what happened? The idiot was a no answer, and a no-show, with no excuses or anything. So the professor gave him a fat 0. Turns out that he needed to do this project and do well on it to pass. He bombed every test, and with this failure he was denied from passing that semester. I am fairly certain that he had to retake that course during the summer, which means he, or more likely his mom, had to shell out another $1,300 just for that class. A couple of months later in a college bookstore, the idiot and his mom, I call her Screamer, run into myself and the other girl who didn't like him. And Screamer just loses it on a girl and I, screaming at us, saying we constantly harassed her son and she was going to make it impossible for myself or the girl to find work. The idiot's mom worked in the same field that our degrees were for. She sat in the board of directors for the Public Health Alliance for the area. So she was a public figure and a supposedly well-behaved and educated one too. She was escorted out by security shortly after, but that wasn't all she had planned. Screamer ended up dragging myself and a girl through every single college meeting they could schedule regarding our non-existent negative behavior towards her son, where he claimed he was constantly harassed, yet was no proof. It was literally months of this poor girl and I having to change our schedules for school classes/studying, so we didn't have any classes or chance happenings/run-ins with the idiot. That's what the college demanded we do. It made our last year or 2 semesters a living hell because we couldn't be anywhere near the idiots, otherwise we could face interdisciplinary hearings or worse. Now for the revenge. The security company that handled the contract for the college was also the same company that handled the contract where I used to work. I was extremely close friends with the night shift supervisor, going out for drinks and playing Halo all night with him and his girlfriend sort of close. So one night after I finished work, I asked him for a favor. On the promise that I wouldn't tell a soul, he helped me, and telling him he'd have another great video to share with his friends, I asked him to let me email the video to my personal email account. After I told him what had happened and on what day and time it happened, he drove me to the campus. Just after the main building had closed, he and I walked over to his security office, where they have all of the recordings that run back to the day the security system was installed. He brought the video up of the idiot's mom in college bookstore, audio and all, of her screaming at myself and my friend. He recognized the screamer. Turns out she has done this before at a different site he patrols, and that he was told he had to keep it quiet by his superiors. I told him he could be as quiet as he wanted, but I was going to get my revenge on her. A quick email later, and I was in possession of the video. I found out who the rest of the board members were over the course of a few days, and they were all sent an email with a video of the screamer going crazy in a college bookstore, screaming at an obviously confused guy and a freaked out girl. The audio perfectly captured the moment where she threatened to make it impossible for me or the girl to find any work anywhere was in that district, followed by her argument with security as she was escorted out. I never received any replies from the board members, so I just waited to see what would happen. The screamer was voted out from her position the following week after the video was shown during one of the meetings she was attending. She lost her very cushy government job and was last seen working in an old age home according to a mutual friend. I'm not sure what happened to the idiot, but I did hear from the same mutual friend that he never graduated and works at a call center now. The girl and I ended up finding full-time work immediately after graduating, never having an issue there. Oh, and a security guard ended up getting hired by the RCMP, so I guess good things do happen to good people. This was many years ago before this subreddit existed, but I was reminded of it last night and thought I'd share it. In high school, I worked for a big-name hardware/home improvement store. The store had just opened up in our little town and it was set to knock the local hardware stores out of business. You had to drive at least 40 minutes to the next closest chain store of its kind. We were busy all the time. The local stores, lumber supply, mom-and-pop hardware, tractor supply, equipment rental, and others were all losing business to us. I think the fact that we were performing in excess of our expectations played an impact on what happened next. My boss, we will call her Carrie, was the one I brought all the issues to concerning theft. I almost entirely facilitated training, safety, and moving stuff around the store, but I technically worked for loss prevention. I did not know at the time, but learned afterwards that Carrie was trying to pinpoint lost money from the registers, and she reviewed the camera footage until she figured out who took it. We will call him Zach. Zach was in my graduating class, so that's likely why I didn't find out about it until it was all over. They were sure that he had stolen about $80 from the registers and had the video footage to prove it, but that money was already gone. Carrie wanted to do more than just fire him. She wanted to catch him in the act in front of other staff, then fire him. She had his schedule changed so that he would work a closing shift in the coming days. Closing shifts typically means the store manager and most of the management staff is gone. She figured if he was going to do anything, he would do it on this day. If not, she was just going to fire him anyway. She stayed well beyond her normal schedule and quietly kept tabs on him. She lucked out, and while he was taking boxes out to the dumpster, he ended up taking a box out to his car. Caught in the act, she walked him back into the store, to her office, and processed him. They did the normal stuff, documented the event, the item that was trying to be shoplifted, and had him sign the paperwork and fired him. What usually happens in these events is we ban the person from shopping at the store, we put their information in the system and tell them to not come back. But in this instance, given the MSRP of the equipment he tried to steal, and the $80 he was going to get fired for anyways, that brought the total just over $500, which was just enough to be a felony theft. They involved the police and took him to court. Since he signed off on a theft that was caught by a loss prevention manager on the day it happened, there was not much defense for him. The judge gave him some community service. The really damning part of the event was the addition of a felony to his criminal record. Before school was over, Zach had lost all of his basketball scholarships. I don't know what compelled him to steal that power tool, but I doubt the rush of getting away with it was worth it. He couldn't pay for college on his own, so he never went. He cuts hair and smokes pot now. This story occurred about 15 years ago. Cast: OP, me, female 5'11", Bob, friend, store manager, Chief, my boss, and the entitled jerk, an individual who lost his car. Background: I worked as a firefighter and investigator for an independent department. For context, an investigator held a rank of lieutenant and was based out of a large station, which housed 2 engines, one newer 110-tower ladder truck, relevant later, one chief car, and one utility truck. Food duties rotated daily among the firefighters, and it was my chief's turn to cook when this incident occurred. My friend Bob was a general manager of a small grocery store. There was a long empty space in front of the store marked emergency vehicles only. Enter entitled jerk, who owned a nice-looking BMW and always parked in the aforementioned spots every week. Bob told the entitled jerk that he couldn't park there. The entitled jerk responded, "I can park wherever I want. I make more in a day than you make in a week." Bob called me frustrated with the entitled jerk. I agreed to monitor the spot. I drove our utility truck, which displayed department decals on the door and featured a single red light on the dashboard, and parked in the emergency vehicles only spot. As I was walking in, I heard, "You can't park there. It's my special spot." I turned to see the entitled jerk. "Excuse me?" I said. "I am on official duty and can't park here," pointing to the decal on the door. The entitled jerk retorted, "You can't be a firefighter. You're a girl. Move your truck and leave." I was proud of my job. Out of 2,000 members in the department, I was one of 5 women. I graduated top of my class. His words left me shocked and angry. I went to Bob's office to discuss the parking violations further, noticing a notice on the fire suppression system indicating an upcoming inspection. And an idea formed. Noticing a notice on the fire suppression system indicating an upcoming inspection, an idea formed. Cue the revenge. After gathering information and leaving Bob's office, I returned to the station and shared entitled jerk's actions and words with my chief. A 6'6", 320-pound Samoan who viewed everyone as family. His face turned bright red upon hearing my story. I shared my idea, and he was thrilled. He immediately called a station meeting where I outlined my plan. We decided to conduct a fire drill/inspection at the store, deploying the old truck and 1 engine. The next time, the entitled jerk parked in the fire lane. 2 weeks later, Bob called the station to report that entitled jerk had just parked. As I was thanking him, his fire alarm went off. I quickly changed into my investigator uniform with turnout gear, informed the chief, and dispatched the trucks. I rode in the Quint. Upon arrival, I saw the entitled jerk's car in the emergency vehicle spot. I instructed 1 engine to plug the entitled jerk's car from the front and the truck to park beside the driver's side door. The engineer began setting up the ladder, deploying 4 large and heavy support struts, one of which crushed the front of the car's hood. The alarm sounded. A lineman broke the car windows to run a large 5-inch hose from the pump to the standpipes through the front seats. I entered the store to find Bob evacuating people due to the alarm. The entitled jerk emerged, saw his car, and became enraged. I called the police dispatch requesting officers at the store as a man was impeding a fire operation. 3 police officers arrived and I led them outside. When the entitled jerk saw me, he charged, screaming that I would pay for damaging his car. I warned him about arrest for assault and interference with a fire investigation. And he pushed me, prompting the officers and me to tackle and handcuff him. He was informed of his arrest for assault, interference with a fire operation, and informed his car will be towed for parking in a fire lane. He received 12 months probation, a $500 fine for parking violations, and lost his BMW. Moral of the story? Don't park where you shouldn't, or face the consequences. So this happened during the beginning of my senior year of high school. I was balancing football, school, and work. I worked at a convenience store chain that's only around in my region of the country, USA. I had an incompetent store manager. She was lazy, never wanted to do work, and all the store associates, including the assistant manager, always stuck cleaning up her mess. She took 2-hour lunches and always thought it was appropriate to leave her shift early. For some reason, and I'll never understand why, she did not like me. A good example was her pricing me up for using my cell phone on the floor when it was my mother calling me to ask Quinn to pick me up. I didn't have my license at the time, or the time she gave me a hard time for not fully stocking the fridge. Now she came in early in the morning and I would usually come in at the end of her shift because I had school and football practice. Then there was a night shift after me. She would come in the morning and see the fridge not fully stocked. This is just an example of how much of an idiot she really was, and how she should have been given the night shift guys write-ups for that. But no, I was her main target. Now, I had gotten very sick one weekend and had called in to work to say that I couldn't come in that day. None of the managers or assistant managers were in, so the team lead took my message. Looking back at it, I should blame him more than my idiot manager. I assume he never told the managers I was out because, come the next week, I had a football game on Saturday and I usually worked Saturdays. When I had gotten that job earlier that year, I gave her my football schedule so she wouldn't put me on for that day. My boss calls me Friday night telling me that I need to come into work Saturday because I missed work the previous week, and the no call, no show is automatic termination. I told her I did call in, but she didn't believe me, so instead of her telling me I was fired, I said, I quit, right there on the phone. So I guess she didn't fire me, but I quit. Now to the revenge. I already had plans to get her fired or demoted. Either one would have made me happy. Over the course of that month prior to my departure, I had taken videos and pictures of how badly she had the store running. By the way, I had gotten to my shift, I had taken pictures of filthy floors and bathrooms, flies all around the food assembly area, and associates on their phones, even the manager herself playing games or whatever right on the floor, basically showing how she kept her store a wreck during her shift. And I was left to clean up the rest. I ended up sending this all the way up to our regional manager. She was involved with our district manager. If I sent it to him, it would have gotten buried. And I got a response back that the situation would be handled accordingly. The district manager ended up getting fired due to incompetence, and he was also under fire initially for sexual assault allegations from other store workers. My store manager was demoted all the way down to a basic store associate. The icing on the cake was a year later after I quit/got fired. I was working at a warehouse that year after I graduated, making almost $20 an hour. There was another one of the convenience stores right down the road from my building. I ended up going there for lunch only to see my old boss getting reamed out by that store's manager. So with the knowledge that I was making almost 3 times her hourly wage, store associates only made $8.35 an hour, and she was still incompetent at her job, it made me quite happy. First things first, this is my stepdad's story, not mine. My stepdad used to live on a fairly busy but rather narrow road. Most of the people that lived on said road worked unusual times, and so some cars would be parked on a road during morning and evening rush hours. Garages weren't very common in this area, as the houses were very small. Now, since most of the residents knew that their narrow road was a fair major thoroughfare, they would all park halfway up on the pavement, leaving enough room for two-way traffic to get through comfortably. This was technically illegal here, but nobody cared as it helped the traffic, and there wasn't another comfortable way to do it. Until one day, my stepdad walks outside to find a parking ticket on his car. Then down the road he looks and every car has a brand new parking ticket. He got together with some of the neighbors and sure enough, they all had tickets for the same reason, parking halfway up on the pavement. They went down to the local police station and were told that nothing could be done as it was technically illegal. So they would all have to pay the tickets. So they did. And the next day they all parked in the road. as the letter of the law says is required. The road was just wide enough that they could legally park cars on both sides of the road in line with each other, which they did, leading to it being difficult to even get one car down the middle, let alone the normal two-way traffic that came through there at rush hour. The next day, a traffic cop came down to ask them to please park halfway up the pavement as it was heavily disturbing traffic. Cue the parking tickets that everyone kept coming out to prove to the cop that they were just following both the letter of the law as well as the police station's own rules. Apparently, they did come to a more formal agreement with the local police to be able to park up the pavement. But my stepdad moved away soon after this, so I can't say for certain. I did drive past there a while ago though, and most of the cars are indeed parked halfway up on the pavement. So I work as a minimum wage cashier at a discount store. I see a lot of people in a day, especially people who know how to do my job better than me. Due to their lack of experience and profound understanding, that my job is the easiest in the world. Now, I always shut that crap down in a classic corporate happy public service employee way. Well, actually, it makes it a little easier this way, but thank you so much for helping. Like I'm talking a toddler down from an upcoming tantrum, but I don't leave room for arguing. It's almost like I'm playing a character honestly. It works for me. But I never just let someone do something stupid, like letting them walk out with a bag too heavy without double bagging it, or letting them leave putting the receipt in their bag if it looks like they might want to return it. But not today. It's Saturday, so it's busy. All day as I would finally get a minute to get my other work done, someone would come up taking forever to consider the impulse buys while I'm stuck waiting for them at the register getting nothing done. This woman did that but twice. She got up there, pondered for a minute, got a line behind her, decided to go look at something else. I'm stuck with this line till just before she gets back and ponders again before finally getting to me. She's your average looking middle-aged soccer mom, but already she's getting on my nerves. But hey, it's Saturday, every customer gets on my nerves, so whatever. She's got a lot of larger but lightweight items with some smaller items like bags of candy and socks. So I'm getting half of it in one large bag, half of it in another large bag. So I got to get the second bag and hand her the first one when she goes, "No, I don't want a lot of bags. You can fit the rest in there, it's fine. You should ask before getting more bags. It's your job to do things how the customers want and ask. Otherwise, you should just know to do one bag if you can. It's wasteful. I only want one bag." And I thought to myself, wow, it sounds like she's never done retail a day in her life. She must know what she's doing. Now it's also worth noting she had a few heavier items. Not many, but a few. They were glass jars of sauces with lots of pigment and staining properties. It's also worth mentioning she was getting some chips that came in bags with pointy, sharper edges that eat bags for breakfast. The bag gets too heavy and they press into the sides of any angle, and that bag's toast. It is also worth mentioning she was getting several white clothes made of very sustainable material. Nice clothes. She said they were for an important party she had to go to that night, bragging. Well, normally I would double bag, which would keep the sharp corners in check. But she was right, she only wanted one bag. So that must be all she needs. So I got the glass jars in with the clothes, nested in there nicely spaced out where they wouldn't hit each other with clothes between them, and the bags on top spread around the top so it was easier to lift the bag, just like she wanted. That damn bag was already looking like it would bust wide open any second when she took it from the counter. Luckily, a line hadn't formed behind her yet, just someone watching the impulse buy over. So I couldn't really step away and had nothing to do but watch as I had a clear view of the parking lot. I watched as she struggled out the two front doors, no automatic. Got 1/4 of the way to her car when the bag burst. Glass and sauce everywhere. Said she had like $15 worth about 5 jars. She struggled to force them back into the bag, hoping she could at least pile them in her arms with the bag holding it together. Trying not to cut herself on a glass, she had wrapped up. It broke some more. She tried to salvage it and balance it back up, failed. Gave up, grabbed as much of an armful as she could, had to take like 5 trips, her blouse and pants ruined. Maybe after over a year and a half of cashiering nearly every day, I know what I'm doing. Shocker. I was a 16-year-old from Serbia, living in a building next to my grandmother's. However, our entrances face different directions, making it a bit tricky to navigate between the two. Let me explain. Although our buildings are connected, they are divided in such a way that each entrance functions as if it were its own separate building. In other words, you can't pass from one entrance to another without exiting the building first. I lived in an entrance that faced another building. To get to my grandmother's apartment, I had to go around this building to another entrance. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed away 8 years prior, leaving my grandmother living alone. Seeing an opportunity for more space, my parents was at initially telling me proposed to my grandma that we convert one empty room into a private space for me, as I was in need of privacy. My grandmother was overjoyed by the idea. After discussing it with me, we went ahead and set up the room. As I abided by my grandmother's rules and helped her out, I didn't spend all my time there. Instead, I moved between apartments as necessary. For instance, I would come home from school, drop off my things, and then head to my grandmother's to sleep. In the morning, I'd return to my own home for breakfast. This routine varied by about an hour, depending on the day. Directly opposite my entrance was another, and above it, on a window, I would often see an elderly woman watching me. She always seemed to look at me with a bit of a scowl as I passed by. Sometimes I caught her glance, but I usually wore headphones and a hoodie, so I paid her little mind. When I had classes in the afternoon, I would typically get home around 8:20 p.m. and visit my grandmother around 10:30 p.m. with some exceptions. The woman was almost always there, but it never really bothered me. After all, I only saw her for about 20 seconds a day. One evening, as I was heading to my grandmother's without my headphones or hoodie, she finally spoke to me. "You're going to get high again?" "Huh? Every day? You go out with that hoodie over your head in the dead of the night, and I can clearly see what you're doing." It was 10:30 p.m. then. "And what exactly am I doing?" "Dealing drugs." "What's in that backpack?" "Well, that's none of your business. Just a laptop and some equipment." "I think it's drugs." "Open it and let me see." Me thinking to myself that the only thing I'd open for her was a can of worms. "Leave me alone," I tell her, and I simply walked away. The next day, she was waiting for me outside the entrance. "What's in that bag?" "Lady, you're acting crazy." "If you don't tell me, I will call the police." "Call whoever you want, I'm out of here." I left while she was yelling after me. The following day, 2 police officers were waiting outside my door alongside Karen. "That's him. He's the local dealer." "What's going on?" I ask. The officers, whom were referred to as Police Officer 1 and 2, introduced themselves. One of them says, "We received a report of drug trafficking occurring here." Me, looking at him incredulously, "Is this for real?" The other cop says, "As absurd as it sounds, we're required to investigate." "Can you search me and let me go then?" "Well, we will search you, but we can't let you go immediately. The lady claims she saw you dealing." "That woman is delusional. But do what you must. I just want to get this over with." As police officer number 1 searched me, Karen continued to shout accusations of me being a dealer. The other cop asks me, "How old are you?" 16. "Do you have any ID on you?" I literally just stepped out of the building next to her. I don't even have my wallet with me. "Can I go get it from my apartment? I'll leave my backpack here as collateral." You live here?" "Yes." "Alright, I'll accompany you to your apartment but won't enter." Upon returning to my apartment, my parents inquired about what I had forgotten. I responded, "Can I grab my wallet? My ID is inside. I want to buy some juice." Indeed, I was actually craving juice for later. After showing my ID to the officers, which confirmed my identity and address, police officer number 2 remarked, "There is nothing suspicious in this backpack. The kid hasn't done anything wrong. Honestly, just look at him." Karen persisted. "I know he has drugs. I saw him. Where? I asked. When Karen pointed to a location under surveillance cameras, I seized the opportunity. When exactly did you see this? Karen specified a date, not realizing her mistake. I say, perfect, we can review the camera footage. Realizing her error, Karen did the unthinkable. Well, she slapped me. Police officer number 1 promptly handcuffed her and placed her in a police car while she screamed in protest. A side note about myself, I have a significant number of pimples. When Karen slapped me, it caused some to bleed, which made the incident appear more severe than it was. Police officer number 1 informed my parents about the situation. They came outside, and while my mom tended to my face, my dad discussed the matter with the police. He asked if I could be excused to clean up, and police officer number 1 agreed. Karen was charged with assaulting a minor and misusing police resources. Somehow we managed to keep the incident quiet among our neighbors, ensuring that no one else became aware of the altercation. I drive a small Fiat, which I bought cheaply. It doesn't have a gas cap lock, a feature I didn't care about because, well, I got it at a very low price. One day I noticed I was low on gas, so I filled it up at the gas station, parked it, and went home. The next day I saw the gas cap open, and when I started the car, there was barely any fuel left. I barely managed to drive it to the gas station, which is 1 kilometer away. I shrugged it off and parked next to some cameras, thinking, whatever happens, happens. It wasn't the first time and there was nothing I could do about it. After 7 days, a chubby, bald, medium-height guy who lives 2 floors below me was awaiting by my car. When he saw me, he approached and the conversation went as follows. Is this your car? Yes. This is a bill for an engine replacement. I haven't replaced the engine. My engine. What should I do with your bill? Your fuel ruined my car. And when did I give you my fuel? I borrowed it. When? 7 days ago. You stole my fuel. Don't call me a thief. I drive a BMW, which is more expensive than your life. And yet you can't afford fuel? Your car runs on gasoline, while mine runs on diesel. So you ruined my car. Well, that's karma for you. You'll pay, or I will sue you. If you give me a piece of paper, I'll use it as a liner for my parrot's cage. Then I'll summon you to court. And he hands me the summons document. It says here that I sold you the fuel. Well, there is no evidence that you didn't. See you in court then. I prepared for court, perhaps too relaxedly. My brother, a lawyer, represented me. In court, the judge asks him, why are you accusing OP? The entitled man's lawyer says, OB sold fuel to my client claiming it was diesel, thus causing engine damage. The judge asks, defendant, what do you have to say? My brother responds, my client never sold fuel, and at the time the entitled man claims he ran out of fuel, someone had stolen it from him. Do you have evidence that OP sold you fuel? I gave him X amount of money in cash. Well, if you don't have evidence that OP sold you fuel, then there is nothing we can do. The judge issued a warning to the entitled man regarding wasting the court's time and potential false accusations. He also was required to pay a few €1,000 for a new engine, while my Fiat Panda is still running smoothly, full of fuel. Many years ago, in a previous life, I was an investigator in a robbery/homicide/vice section of the organization. I had a partner, Karen, whom I worked well with for the preceding year. I had been warned about her backstabbing behavior in other sections, but I foolishly ignored it. Leading up to the incident, she had been assigned 3 child exploitation cases that all she had to do was confirm the facts of the case, and she would have probable cause to obtain warrants. In spite of the reminders to perform the tasks, she waited until the 11th hour and then went on vacation without having completed the tasks. So I did it for her. She could now go to a judge without further action. When she returned, she was livid and accused me of stealing her work. I said if she had done that for me, I would have bought her lunch. From that point on, our professional relationship deteriorated and I recalled the warnings I was given about Karen that mirrored my experience. A couple of months later, our idiot supervisor mistakenly assigned Karen and I the same case. I made contact with members of the task force and spoke with the officer who originated the case. Karen overheard my last conversation and blew her stack, saying words to the effect of, "You're stealing my work again. I was assigned that case. You're trying to make me look bad." I calmly explained that the idiot supervisor assigned me the case and I showed her the paperwork. She would have none of that though. I offered to buy her breakfast and talk it out, but she told me to F off and added, "You do not do anything on my case without my permission. Do you understand?" So, I relinquished the case. For the next months, Karen tried to throw me under the bus for anything and everything, going into the idiot supervisor's office and complaining about me. I'd get called into the idiot supervisor's office for a 60-minute coffee break or other such nonsense. Well, a triple homicide case came down the pipe and she wanted it bad, schmoozing the idiot supervisor to give her the case. Rather than ask me personally, she had the idiot supervisor approach me to do the forensics portion. I told him that I was told not to do anything on her case without her permission, and I didn't want to get in trouble or upset her, so I was going to need permission for everything in writing before I did it. I needed permission to pack the forensic kit. Exactly how many paper bags, plastic bags, and so on. How many markers, how many swabs. I would need her written permission to enter the crime scene. How many entry photos? What distance? How would I collect each piece of evidence? How would I label them? I told the idiot supervisor to make sure she understood that because I was not to do anything on her case without her permission. He scurried off and then returned a short time later and told me that she didn't want the case and that it was mine.